Have you ever been in a room full of people who only showed up because they thought they were about to get something? This is the story of what happened when a grandmother passed away, and her family came crawling, expecting a fortune. But what they didn't expect was the one person they had overlooked their entire lives, and a letter that would turn their expectations upside down. I wasn't supposed to be there, at least not according to them. Not the aunts and pearls whispering behind crystal glasses. Not the uncles who always called me the quiet one. Not the cousins who only remembered my name when they needed someone to take the family photo. They never saw me as part of the picture, just a shadow in the background. But I was there, sitting quietly in the corner of my grandmother's oversized living room, a place that had once smelled like fresh bread and lavender. Now it smelled like dust and expectation. I watched them all, the family, gathered not in grief but in greed. Some wore black like a costume, some didn't even try. They weren't here to say goodbye, they were here for the will. Her name was Margaret Ellen Hargrove, but to me she was just Grandma. She passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks ago at the age of 89. She was strong, stubborn, and full of quiet fire. She raised me after my mother, her only daughter, died when I was 14. We lived in a little cottage near the back garden of the main estate. She used to say we were the quiet corner of the family, and I liked that. While the rest of them went off chasing careers, climbing ladders, hosting parties, I stayed, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Every Sunday I brought her lemon cake from the cafe down the road. We'd sit on the porch, she in her old rocking chair, me at her feet. She'd tell me stories from her girlhood, from before the world got so loud. She loved her cat Daisy, a fluffy gray rescue who acted like a queen. She drank black Darjeeling tea with no sugar and one thin slice of lemon, and every night, just before bed, she'd hum along to an old instrumental version of Moon River. She never told me I was special. She didn't have to. She made me feel seen when the rest of the world looked right past me. Now she was gone, and the vultures had arrived. Everyone was dressed up, gathered around the marble coffee table where a thick white envelope lay sealed, marked Last Will and Testament. Standing beside it was a tall, silver-haired man in a dark suit, Mr. Langford, her longtime lawyer. He cleared his throat. The room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Per Mrs. Hargrove's final instructions, I will now read her official last will and testament." Murmurs ran through the room like ripples in a pond. Aunt Linda adjusted her posture. Uncle Fred leaned in. I stayed in the corner, holding my breath. I, Margaret Ellen Hargrove, being of sound mind, hereby declare this to be my final will. To the person I loved most, I leave the entirety of my estate, including property, financial holdings, personal belongings, and assets. However, this inheritance is conditional. Conditional? Should no individual fulfill the conditions stated at the end of this document, all assets are to be donated to the Light Home Foundation, a charity dear to my heart. Gasps, confusion. Uncle Fred's brow furrowed. Aunt Linda turned to her daughter, whispering sharply. I stayed quiet, but my heart was racing. I had no idea what the condition was, but something told me this was just the beginning. Everyone expected money. No one expected a test. "At this time," he said, unfolding a smaller envelope, "I've also been instructed to read a handwritten letter from Mrs. Hargrove herself, a personal message to be heard before any inheritance is released." He held it up, yellowed, folded with care, sealed with red wax. A hush fell over the room. "To my family, if you are hearing this, then I have already left this world, and left you hopefully with something far more important than assets. But if I've learned anything in my 89 years, it's that money reveals people more than it changes them." My hands gripped the armrest. I could feel eyes turning toward me, even before they had a reason to. "You all came here expecting something. Some of you came out of obligation, others out of hope, but only one of you came out of love. Only one person sat beside me when the world grew quiet. Only one person listened, not to gain, but to give. I've placed a condition on my estate, a simple one. The person who truly knew me will know the answers." Chairs creaked. Someone whispered, "Is this a joke?" Uncle Fred scoffed out loud. "She's testing us? If you can answer these 3 questions. 1. What was the name of my cat? 2. What tea did I drink every afternoon? 3. What song did I play every night before bed? If someone in this room can answer all 3, the estate is theirs. If no one can, then my final gift will go to those who truly need it, strangers at Light Home who never asked me for anything. With love, Margaret." The room exploded. "What kind of nonsense is this? Who remembers something like that? This is ridiculous! I'll ask once, does anyone in this room know the answers?" Dead silence. The cat's name was Daisy. Every head turned. She was a rescue cat, gray, fluffy. Grandma said she was the only one who didn't talk back. And the tea? Darjeeling, black, no sugar, one thin slice of lemon. She said sugar was for people who needed to sweeten something missing. And the music? Moon River instrumental version. I swallowed. She said it reminded her of the person she used to be, the dreamer who still believed in quiet things. No one spoke. Even the cousins who usually rolled their eyes stared. Uncle Fred's mouth opened, but no words came out. Aunt Linda clutched her handbag like it was the only thing she had left. I can verify all 3 answers. They match Mrs. Hargrove's private records. He looked at me. Emily, by the conditions of this will, the estate is yours. I didn't cry, I didn't gloat, I just sat there, because all I could hear in my head was Grandma humming Moon River from the other room, her voice soft, her teacup warm in her hands, and Daisy curled up at her feet. She had always said, "The ones who listen in silence are often the ones who matter most." Silence is fragile, and in that room, it shattered within seconds. This is outrageous. This was never about love. This is manipulation. She must have gotten to her when she was vulnerable. Who lets a child walk away with everything? The mask came off. Whatever civility they had left dissolved into noise. Finger-pointing, harsh whispers, muttered threats. No one cared that Grandma had just died. They cared that I, the quiet one, the girl in the corner, was walking out with everything. I felt like I was watching a play I didn't audition for. Same stage, different roles, and for once, I wasn't the background. The will is airtight, it was reviewed and notarized, and Emily fulfilled the condition exactly as stated. She must have memorized those answers, probably coached by someone, that's the only explanation. I didn't ask for this, I didn't expect it. But I showed up, every week, every Sunday. When you didn't call, when you didn't visit, I wasn't there for money, I was there for her. They didn't care, because when people want money, the truth becomes irrelevant, they only see what they didn't get. That evening, the emails started. We want a meeting, we believe the will was written under pressure. Our lawyers will be in touch. But what they didn't know was that Grandma had planned for this. I remembered something she once said while folding laundry. The real will is never the one on paper, it's the one you carry, the one no one else can touch. Back at the cottage, I went to the sewing room, pulled back the old rug, lifted the creaky floorboard under the window bench, and there it was, a dusty blue box, tied with a frayed ribbon. Inside, a letter, a document, and a deed. It was a second deed, updated, notarized, and signed only a year ago. It named me, and only me, as the full legal owner of the Hargrove estate, not just as a condition of the will, but as a direct transfer of title. This document overruled everything, and Grandma knew it. The letter was short. If they try to fight you, this will end the conversation. Keep it safe, keep your peace, and always remember, Em, the things they want the most are the things they never earned. I scanned it, sent it to Mr. Langford. He reviewed it. His response? Bulletproof. They don't have a case. The next week, Aunt Linda's lawyer called. We'd like to avoid a lengthy legal dispute. Is there room for negotiation? No, there's only room for the truth. They say money changes people, but maybe it just reveals them. After the second deed surfaced, everything stopped. No more emails, no more lawyers, just silence. It was over. On paper, I had won. But what do you do when you inherit everything? I sat in the big house, the one they all wanted. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the quiet one anymore. But I didn't feel like a winner either. Because Grandma's legacy wasn't in the furniture, the stock portfolios, or the land titles. It was in the people she reached, the people no one else saw. And so, Emily did something unexpected. She didn't sell the house. She didn't renovate it into luxury suites. She didn't rent it out to influencers. She reopened the front door and turned the Hargrove estate into something more. We called it the Daisy House, a free community center for elderly women, a place for them to read, gather, talk, heal, and feel seen. We used Grandma's old garden to grow herbs and tea. We kept her reading chair by the window and added shelves of books in large print. Every Thursday, I hosted a reading circle. We read stories out loud, the kind that made you feel young again. And every afternoon we served tea. Darjeeling. No sugar, one slice of lemon. The town took notice. People who had never known Margaret Hargrove began quoting her. Seniors who had once stayed home in silence now had somewhere to belong. Volunteers signed up, local students helped plant tulips in the yard. The house that had once divided a family now became the place where strangers found comfort. One afternoon I found a little envelope slipped under the door, no name, just handwriting that said, "Thank you for keeping her alive." I cried. 6 months went by. One morning Emily received a letter from someone unexpected. "Emily, I still don't agree with how things ended, but I visited the Daisy house last week and I saw what you did with it. I thought inheritance was about money, but now I see it's about meaning. You honored her better than any of us ever could. Aunt Linda." Then came the next surprise. One rainy Saturday morning a familiar car pulled up. Uncle Fred. He stepped out slowly, holding a book in his hand. An old paperback, yellowed edges, spine cracked from age. "Is this the place where people read?" "Yes, come in, we'll put on some tea." And just like that the story shifted, no longer about what was taken, but about what was given. Emily didn't just inherit a house, she inherited a voice, a mission, a legacy. And most of all, she inherited clarity. That what you give in silence echoes louder than any will ever written. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe, because sometimes the quietest people in the room are carrying the loudest truth. By the time Angela stepped into Bravaro headquarters the following Monday morning, her plan was already in motion. The lobby was quiet, elegant, polished marble floors, natural wood panels, a touch of green in every corner. No posters screaming productivity slogans, no forced enthusiasm, just an air of competence and calm. The receptionist smiled as she handed Angela her access badge. "Welcome aboard, Miss Reed. They've been waiting for you." She took the elevator to the 21st floor. Her new office, glass-walled, minimalist, and facing Lake Michigan, was already stocked with everything she needed. On the desk was a note. "Angela, the beginning of something better. Let us know what you need." Nora Angela didn't need much, just a team, autonomy, and Buildco's trust. At 10 a.m. she joined a call with Megan Hill and her procurement team. "I have to say," Megan began, "I didn't believe the rumors when I first heard them." Angela smiled. "Which ones?" "That Summit fired you, and that you were the one behind every system that ever worked." Angela let the silence hang, then replied, "You're about to find out exactly how much of that's true." For the next 40 minutes, Angela walked them through the transition plan. She addressed each pain point Megan had brought up for the past 2 years, issues that Summit had consistently ignored or papered over. At the end of the meeting, Megan leaned back in her chair. "You're going to make this look easy, aren't you?" Angela's answer was simple. "Only because I've already done it before. Now I get to do it without being undermined." That same day, Summit Supply received a formal notice from Buildco's legal team. "We are terminating our contract effective 30 days from today. We've already engaged Bravaro Industrial to handle the transition. All handovers will go through their team under the direction of Angela Reed." The news hit Summit like a bombshell. Angela didn't need to guess how it was received. She heard about it from half a dozen sources. From Rashida. "People are in shock. Vince slammed his office door. He's been in meetings all day." From Kevin, who had quietly left 2 weeks after Angela's firing. "You took Buildco? That's 25% of their entire annual revenue." From a former intern, now a team lead. "We all knew they messed up when they let you go. Now they know it too." By midweek, Vince had gone full damage control. He called Buildco, left voicemails, sent desperate emails, offered clarification on what had happened with Angela. Buildco didn't respond, because Angela had already delivered something more valuable than promises: results. Bravaro's response time was faster, communication clearer, vendor coordination tighter, logistics forecasts more accurate. The difference was so immediate it bordered on embarrassing. That Thursday, Angela received a message from Bravaro's CEO. "Phenomenal start, Angela. You've done in 3 days what some can't do in 3 months." She didn't gloat, she didn't forward the email, she didn't even mention it to her team. Because this was never about revenge, it was about standards, and Summit was about to learn what those really looked like. By the end of the second week at Bravaro, Angela's name had become a quiet hum across the logistics industry, and a thunderclap inside Summit Supply. Internally, Bravaro's executive team was buzzing. Buildco was not only satisfied, they were praising the transition publicly. Their senior VP of operations even made a passing comment at a trade event. "Sometimes the best thing that can happen to your supply chain is your vendor firing their best person. It just makes her easier to hire." Angela read that quote in a forwarded email, then promptly closed the tab. She wasn't chasing headlines, she was building something better. But Vince? He was chasing ghosts. On Friday morning, Angela opened her inbox to find a message from Bravaro's general counsel, flagged urgent. Subject, meeting request, Vince Caldwell, Summit, wants to discuss contract ethics, potential violations, and unauthorized personnel movement. Angela stared at the screen, unmoved. This was his last card. A weak attempt to regain control over a game he no longer understood. The meeting was scheduled via video. Angela sat in the Bravaro conference room flanked by 2 legal advisors and Nora, who insisted on being present just to watch. Vince appeared on screen at exactly 2 p.m. His tie was slightly askew. His voice, when it started, was uncharacteristically tight. "Angela, thank you for making time." She offered a professional nod. "Of course." Vince cleared his throat. "I won't go into details, but Summit believes Bravaro may have acted improperly during the BuildCo transition. The timing of your hire, and the way certain employees followed you, raises serious concerns." Angela leaned forward slightly, her voice even and precise. "Let me be very clear. No one was recruited from Summit. Everyone who joined us did so of their own will, after leaving your company independently." She paused, then added, "As for BuildCo, they approached Bravaro. I simply did what I've always done, solve their problems." Vince's eyes flickered. Bravaro's lead counsel spoke next. "Unless you have documented evidence of misconduct, Mr. Caldwell, we consider this matter closed." Nora smiled without showing her teeth. Vince said nothing more. After 30 seconds of silent eye contact, he left the call. Angela turned to Nora. "Do you think he actually believed I'd fold?" Nora shook her head. "No, but I think he just realized you were the backbone all along, and that there's no one left at Summit who can stand without you." That evening, Angela sat by her office window, watching the city lights flicker on across Chicago. Her laptop dinged. It was a message from a junior Summit analyst, someone she had mentored in her 3rd year as team lead. "Just wanted you to know, Vince tried to blame the BuildCo loss on a hostile takeover." Everyone laughed. Angela stared at the message, then closed her laptop. She didn't need to respond. She already had. With execution, with grace, with results. Angela always believed she had made an impact at Summit, but she never realized how deep it ran until she was no longer there. By the 3rd week of her tenure at Bravaro, the quiet notes started turning into bold declarations. Former colleagues messaged her on LinkedIn, many under anonymous profiles at first. Some were still at Summit, others had recently left. The theme was always the same: "I stayed because of you. Your systems were the only ones that made sense. I tried to speak up after you were let go, they shut me down. Let me know if you're building something, I want in." Angela didn't reply to everyone, but she read every word. These weren't fan messages. They were calls for stability, for leadership, for the type of workplace Summit had promised, but never delivered. And it made her reflect on something she hadn't allowed herself to consider in years: her legacy. She never chased titles, never politicized meetings, never played the hero, but she showed up, day after day, holiday after holiday, during flu seasons and recessions and shipping crises and snowstorms. She led quietly, mentored generously, and treated warehouse workers with the same respect she gave C-suite execs. That mattered. And now at Bravaro, she wasn't just rebuilding systems. She was rebuilding trust. Angela launched an internal initiative called Ground Up Leadership, a mentorship program for overlooked mid-level employees across Bravaro's supply chain departments. Each participant was matched with an executive mentor. They were encouraged to question inefficiencies, pitch small-scale solutions, and build peer-led teams. Nora loved it. The COO approved expansion within 2 weeks. And just like that, Angela's way of leading quietly began reshaping the entire company. One of her mentees, Trevor, a former forklift supervisor, approached her nervously after a team huddle. "I'm not used to people like you actually listening to people like me," he admitted. "Back at my last job, I was invisible." Angela nodded gently. "Then this is your first real one. Don't waste it." Back in Sacramento, Summit was unraveling. Vince had been called into 2 board reviews, 3 key accounts had requested audits, and the BuildCo fallout had triggered a staff exodus. Angela didn't celebrate it, she simply observed it, like watching a tower she had once held upright finally collapse without the scaffolding she had quietly provided for 2 decades. Sometimes strength isn't loud, it's the quiet presence that keeps everything else from falling apart. It came on a Wednesday, cold, clear, quiet. Angela had just wrapped a meeting with her project leads when her assistant knocked gently on the office door. "You've got a call. He didn't leave a name but says you'll want to take it. Line 1. Angela raised an eyebrow. Calls were rare. At Bravaro, most communication was precise, digital, and scheduled. She picked up the receiver. "Angela Reed." There was a pause. Then a familiar voice said, "It's Vince." Angela didn't say anything. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from," he added. Still, she waited. "I just wanted to say, I underestimated you, completely, and I think the board knows it too." Angela sat back in her chair. She could hear the exhaustion in his voice, the cracks, the realization that came too late. "You know," she said slowly, "for a long time I thought the work would speak for itself. I didn't realize I had to fight for my seat at the table." Vince exhaled. "You shouldn't have had to." "But I did," she replied. "And when I stopped fighting for space in a room built to ignore me, I built my own room." He was silent for a while, then, "They're talking about replacing me, bringing someone in to stabilize the company, someone like you." Angela allowed herself the smallest smile. "I already have a company." "I figured," he said. Another pause. "If there's anything you'd want to say to me for the record, now's the time." Angela glanced out the window at the lake. The city moved without her permission, without her needing to hold it up. "I don't need the record, Vince. The results are enough." And she hung up. That evening, Angela walked home through downtown Chicago. The air was crisp, her coat heavy, her steps light. She stopped by the market, picked up flowers, brought them home and placed them in a tall glass vase by her window. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she sat at her desk and opened a clean page in her notebook. Not the vendor logs, not the crisis manuals. A new one. She wrote, "Let them underestimate you. Let them look away. Let them push you out. Then walk into the next chapter with your head high and write it your way. The best revenge isn't taking what they had. It's building something so good, they'll never get it back." Angela closed the notebook, smiled. Tomorrow would come with more meetings, more decisions, more change. But tonight she had peace. Not because the past had been corrected, but because she had risen anyway.